So let's go through the rules. Rule number 1, don't hide. The bunker mentality usually doesn't work very well, hiding under your desk, hoping for the phones to stop ringing. No, you want to be visible. You want to make yourself accessible, and you want to do it as quickly as possible. Your initial response is critical. You want to take the time to think it through, but you want to make sure that you don't delay very long. Think about it. In a crisis, people are very quick to blame. They're also very quick to judge. And once they've made up their minds, it's very difficult for you to start changing their thinking. And that's why it's so important to start getting your messages out there as quickly as possible. Now, there are certain times when you might have a little more time, and that's when you can set the time of a crisis. Now, this is less common, but let me give you an example. Let's say a hospital receives a negative internal report that talks about an unusual number of patient deaths due to a vicious superbug. Now, the hospital can hold on to that information, and they can release the bad news along with their response. But here too, the hospital shouldn't delay too long, because what's the first question going to be? Why did you wait so long to release the report? So in general, don't hesitate. Bad news travels fast, and in the digital age, it goes viral. You want to be proactive and not just reactive. Now, rule number 2, communicate early and often. The problem with delaying too long is that you're leaving the door open for other people to set the agenda. You want to be the one that sets the agenda. During a crisis, the media is going to be hungry for information, and if you don't provide it, they will create it. And as the coverage continues, they're going to be looking for angles, for hooks, for reasons to keep telling the story. And if you're not providing them with information, providing them with regular updates, they're going to start looking elsewhere. And that's when they're going to start digging. And they could start talking to your stakeholders. They could start talking to your employees or anyone with a vested interest, maybe a competitor, maybe even the public. And recognize that these created angles can be highly speculative in the early stages of a crisis, but they can also do a lot of damage. So if you want to retain some control of the coverage, you should be the one providing the messages that you want to see conveyed through the media. Now, do you remember when both David Letterman and Tiger Woods got involved in sort of more or less the same kind of problem? It happened around the same time, but these two fellows handled it in very different ways. Letterman got right out in front of the story. He fessed up immediately. He essentially let the wind out of everybody else's sails. There was very little left to say. Some people say he added a page to the crisis handbook by using humor to dilute the situation. You know, he admitted his mistakes, he apologized, he did a funny monologue on his show. He set the media agenda. And because of his approach, he was able to avert what could have been a public relations nightmare. The same nightmare that struck Tiger Woods. Now, Tiger did not set the record straight. He made some statements, but he was very unclear. And that led to a lot of speculation that just went out of control. And then the girlfriends started coming out of the woodwork. I lost track as to how many. And as the bad publicity continued, the sponsors started to get very nervous. According to the Davy Brown Index that marketers use to determine a celebrity's brand value, Tiger dropped from number 6 to number 24 in just 10 days. And then as the coverage continued, more and more of the stories seemed to be coming from unnamed or unidentified sources. It took Tiger 3 months to call a news conference. And then he was surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues, and he refused to take questions. Many of the golf media boycotted, calling it a sham, too little, too late. And a lot of people, I think, really didn't believe his scripted apology. And it was seen really as a way to win back some of the sponsors who had bailed. More than a year later, some of his communication strategies seemed to improve. He organized a media campaign where he targeted certain journalists. He wanted to put himself forward in a positive light, knowing that the media would be interested to retell the story on the first anniversary. But still, his reputation is not the same. You can't always solve a problem immediately or in the initial hours or the initial days of a crisis, but acknowledgement is an important thing. And in the digital age, that acknowledgement has become even more important because silence just raises a lot of questions among all those people who are online, all those people who are waiting for the latest tweet. Rule number 3, tell the truth. Playing truth or consequences with reporters is really a dangerous game, and time has proven that really, ultimately, in the long run, cover-ups don't work. You want to be frank and professional. If possible, you want to let all the bad news out at once. You don't want to do it in little dribs and drabs because then all you're doing is extending the negative coverage. And don't let anybody beat you to it, because then you're just going to be starting off on the defensive.